Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most powerful examples of faith thriving in the wilderness is the prophet Elijah. Elijah was a mighty man of God, bold enough to stand before King Ahab and confront the false prophets of Baal. He prayed, and fire fell from heaven. He spoke, and rain was held back for 3.5 years. Yet even this great prophet found himself in a wilderness season. After his great victory on Mount Carmel, Elijah had to flee for his life. He ran into the wilderness, tired, discouraged, and feeling all alone. Maybe you've been there after a big step of faith. Suddenly you face opposition, setbacks, or exhaustion. Elijah sat under a tree and prayed, "Lord, I've had enough." But notice what God did. He didn't rebuke Elijah for being weak. He didn't leave him in despair. Instead, God sent an angel to strengthen him. He provided fresh bread and water, and Elijah ate until he was restored. And then, when Elijah hid in a cave, overwhelmed and unsure of the future, God revealed himself, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in a gentle whisper. That whisper reminded Elijah that God was still near, still guiding, and that his assignment was not over. Friend, the same God who cared for Elijah in the wilderness will care for you. When you feel exhausted, God will send you strength. When you feel alone, his whisper will remind you that you are never abandoned. The wilderness wasn't Elijah's final chapter, and it's not yours either. The wilderness is a training ground, not the end when life feels silent and your prayers seem unanswered. It's easy to think the wilderness is the end. But it's not, it's the training ground. Remember the Israelites. God didn't take them straight from Egypt into the promised land. He led them through the wilderness so they could learn to depend on him. It was there they saw manna fall from heaven and water flow from the rock. The wilderness wasn't meant to destroy them, it was meant to prepare them. Many times when we find ourselves in a wilderness season, the first thought that comes is, "This is the end. I'll never get out of this." Maybe the business slowed down. Maybe the relationship ended. Maybe your health feels weak or your dreams seem delayed. It's easy to look around at the dry ground and think, nothing is happening here. This is wasted time. But friend, let me encourage you, the wilderness is not where your story ends. It's where your story is strengthened. It's not a graveyard for your dreams. It's a classroom where God prepares you for what's ahead. When God led the Israelites out of Egypt, he didn't take them straight to the promised land, though he could have. Instead, he allowed them to go through the wilderness. Why? Because in the wilderness they learned that he was their provider. Every morning manna fell from heaven. Every day water came from unlikely places, even from a rock. A cloud led them by day, fire led them by night. In the wilderness, they learned that their survival didn't depend on their surroundings, it depended on their God. You may look around today and feel like you don't have enough. Not enough resources, not enough strength, not enough opportunities. But remember, God doesn't need perfect conditions to show his power. If he could bring bread from the sky and water from a rock, he can provide for you right where you are. Don't mistake the wilderness for the end. It's only the training ground. God is teaching you endurance. He's building your faith muscles. He's preparing you for the next level of your destiny. And when the time is right, just like the Israelites, you won't stay in the wilderness. You'll step into your promised land, stronger and more ready than ever before. Friend, the same is true for you. The wilderness is not wasted time. It's holy ground where God is shaping your destiny. Faith grows in hard places. Anybody can have faith when life is easy, but real faith grows in the hard places. A diamond is formed under pressure, and faith is formed under testing. Abraham, Joseph, even Jesus each had to walk through difficulty before stepping into their destiny. When you keep praising in the desert, when you keep believing in the silence, that's when your faith grows roots that cannot be shaken. It's easy to believe when life is going smoothly, when the job is secure, the family is happy, and the doors are opening. Anybody can have faith when everything looks good, but real faith doesn't grow in comfort zones. Real faith grows in the hard places, in the seasons where you don't see how things will work out. Think about it. A seed doesn't grow in soft air, it grows in the soil, under pressure, in the dark, unseen by anyone. That hidden struggle is what makes it strong enough to push through the ground. The same is true with your faith. It develops strength not in the easy days, but in the tough ones. Abraham waited decades for God's promise of a son. Joseph endured betrayal, slavery, and prison before he ever saw the palace. Even Jesus was led into the wilderness to be tested before he launched his ministry. What do all these stories have in common? The hard places weren't wasted places. They were growing places. Those wilderness seasons stretched their faith, toughened their spirit, and prepared them for destiny. Maybe right now you're in a place where you don't see progress. You've prayed, but the answer hasn't come. You've worked, but the breakthrough hasn't shown up. Friend, that's not a sign that your faith is failing. It's a sign that your faith is growing. When you choose to keep trusting, to keep praising, to keep declaring God's promises in the silence, you are stretching spiritual muscles that will carry you farther than you imagined. Faith that only works in comfort won't last. But faith that survives the drought, the delays, the disappointments, that's mountain, moving faith, that's the faith that heaven honors. So don't be discouraged by the hard places. They're not here to break you, they're here to build you. And when you come through this season, your faith will not only have survived, it will have grown stronger, deeper, and unshakable. God works powerfully in the wilderness. Some of God's greatest miracles happen in barren places. He parted the Red Sea, fed Israel with manna, gave Elijah food through ravens, and spoke through a whisper in the cave. When we hear the word wilderness, most of us picture emptiness, lack, or struggle. But in the Bible, the wilderness is often where God showed up the most powerfully. It was never just a place of testing, it was a stage for God's miracles. Think about Israel. They had no farms, no grocery stores, no wells of their own. Yet every morning bread rained down from heaven. Every day water flowed from impossible places, even from a rock. A cloud covered them by day, so the sun would not scorch them, and a fire lit their path at night, so they wouldn't walk in darkness. God didn't need ideal conditions to provide. He used the wilderness to prove that he is more than enough. Or think about Elijah, running for his life, exhausted and alone. God sent ravens to bring him food morning and night. Later, when he was hiding in a cave, God didn't reveal himself through the mighty wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but through a gentle whisper. In other words, the wilderness became the very place where Elijah experienced God's provision and God's presence in the most personal way. Friend, what does this tell us? That God's power is not limited by your environment. He doesn't need the economy to be perfect, the doors to be wide open, or the resources to already be there. He can bless you in the desert. He can provide for you in places that look barren. He can turn the driest season into the most miraculous one. So don't despise your wilderness. Instead, look for God's hand in it, that closed door, that unexpected provision, that quiet peace in your heart. It's all evidence that he is working. The wilderness is not where you're abandoned. It's where God's power becomes undeniable. And when you step out of it, you'll know beyond a doubt. If he could sustain you in the wilderness, he can carry you anywhere. That tells us God doesn't need ideal conditions to bless you. The wilderness is where his power shows up most clearly. The dry season is preparation, not punishment. Don't mistake delay for punishment. David was anointed king as a boy, but spent years in caves before the throne. Those dry years were not wasted. They prepared him to lead. The same is true for you. The dry place is not rejection. It's God building your endurance and maturity so you can handle the blessing when it comes so often when life feels dry, when nothing seems to be moving forward. Our first thought is, did I do something wrong? Has God forgotten me? Maybe he's upset with me, But friend, let me assure you the dry season is not God's punishment. It's his preparation. Think about David. He was anointed to be king as a teenager, yet instead of walking straight into the palace, he spent years hiding in caves, running from King Saul and living like a fugitive. On the surface, it looked unfair. But those hidden years weren't wasted years. They were shaping years. In the wilderness, David learned how to lean on God's strength, how to lead men, how to stay humble, and how to trust God's timing. When the throne finally came, he was ready. Without the dry season, David would never have had the character to carry the crown. The same is true for you. If it feels like life has slowed down, if your prayers seem unanswered, don't assume God has abandoned you. Behind the scenes, he's getting you ready. He's stretching your capacity, developing your endurance, and building your faith so you can handle the blessings ahead. You see, sometimes what feels like delay is actually protection. If God gave you the promotion, the relationship, or the opportunity too soon, it could overwhelm you. So instead, he takes you through a season of preparation, making sure you're strong enough to carry what he's about to release. Don't misinterpret the silence. The farmer knows the seed is growing even before it breaks through the soil. In the same way, God is working beneath the surface in your life. What looks like nothing is actually something. So lift your head, stay faithful, and keep trusting. The dry season isn't rejection, it's preparation. And when the time is right, you'll step into your promised land fully ready, stronger, and more mature than ever before. Victory follows the wilderness. Every wilderness has an expiration date. Israel reached the promised land. Joseph reached the palace. Jesus left the wilderness in the power of the Spirit. The wilderness is temporary, but the victory that follows is permanent. Keep declaring, this wilderness is not my home. Victory is on the way. Friend, one thing you need to know today is this: every wilderness has an expiration date. It may feel long, it may feel endless, but the wilderness is never permanent. With God, the wilderness is always followed by victory. Look at the pattern in Scripture. The Israelites didn't wander forever. Yes, they went through 40 years in the desert, but eventually they stepped into the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Joseph endured betrayal, slavery, and years in prison, but that wasn't his final chapter. The palace was waiting on the other side. Even Jesus, after 40 days in the wilderness, came out in the power of the Spirit, ready to begin a ministry that would change the world. What do these stories tell us? The wilderness is temporary, but the victory that follows is permanent. Maybe right now you feel stuck in a desert. You've prayed, but nothing has shifted. You've worked hard, but the breakthrough hasn't shown up. Don't lose heart. The silence doesn't mean God has forgotten you. He's simply writing a bigger ending than you imagined. The very place that feels like your setback is going to turn into your setup for something greater. When victory comes, and it will, you'll realize the wilderness made you stronger. The nights you cried built compassion in you. The prayers you prayed in faith, even when you saw nothing, deepened your trust in God. The rejection that stung was actually God's redirection. So keep walking, keep believing, keep declaring, this wilderness is not my home. Victory is on the way. The same God who brought Israel to their promised land, who lifted Joseph to the palace, who raised Jesus in power after his wilderness, he is the same God who will bring you through. Your wilderness is not the end. It's the pathway to your greatest victory. And when you step out, you won't just survive, you'll thrive.